Hey, everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee,
Hey everybody, Sal Baglio.
And Bruce Brodeen.
and you are watching Skips and Scratches.
I bought a brand new record, 12 inches. I bought a brand new record, 12 inches. It's a big old record, it's 12 inches.
What about 45s? I'm curious. So before getting an album, I was buying 45s, and I still, by the way, I still have all these albums that I bought, that were given to me, I guess in this case with T-Rex. But with 45s, I mean, I still have all these 45s that I had from like 1968, 69, and on into the 70s. But my favorite all-time 45 single to this day is Hitchin' a Ride by Vanity Fair.
Yeah.
I mean, that song will just make me weepy with nostalgic emotions. It just sort of flows over and washes over my soul. If you had to pick 145 that represents the archetype of either of you, what would that be of your young youth? And I will sip my tequila, Casa Amigos, this week, by the way, as you ponder.
It looks like Sal's as baffled as I am. I haven't thought about that, but
Just pick one.
Yeah.
8 days a week.
8 days a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I had that single. I took it to a friend's house for an outdoor party. This is my memory of 8 days a week. And I left it out in the sun and it warped. And forever, whenever I listened to it, I heard it. And to this day, when I hear 8 days a week, I hear it.
Yeah.
It's like a warped. I remember I looked at it. I was so sad. It was like all melted and warpy, and I don't want to
Actually,
the party was on the other side. But the single, it would have to be Paperback Writer and Rain, because that was my brother. That was 1966. I was 9 years old. He gave me the money. It was change. It was probably, I think, singles bent. Were they even 50 cents?
yeah, they were like 49 cents, I think, around then, 39.
He gave me the money. He says, run down to Central Music. Mike, that's the guy's name that owned it. Mike and his wife. I don't remember her name. He's got a copy there. Run down and get it. The new Beatles record. What's it called? Paperback Writer Rain. And I ran down. It was a couple blocks away, East Boston. And I went in. I said, Paperback Writer Rain. And he says, do you want to hear it? You want to listen? Because, they had a little turntable. And when you went in to buy singles, you could listen to it.
Yeah,
I was
the
like,
listening booths.
I don't need to hear it. And I ran back home. And so that memory is fused with that. It just happens to be that those are brilliant songs anyway. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And it was the summer of 1966. I hear that record. I can smell that weather. And And later that summer, in August of 66, the Beatles actually played at Suffolk Downs, which is in East Boston. And I didn't get to go. My brother got to go. You got to see them play.
Sal's mention of how that warped sound sort of every time he hears it. I remember might have been the first time or maybe the fifth time, the Hard Day's Night was on TV. And we would take our little handheld tape recorders with stick the handheld microphone in with a wire, and we held up the microphone to the TV and we would record the movie. Now, at that time, we had a curfew, or it was our stay up night, but we could only stay up till like 10 o'clock. So we had to set the timer, and the Beatles are singing If I Fell. And while they're singing, and I couldn't stand the pain, and then the timer went off. Ding. Right here it is, 40, 50 years after that.
You will always hear it that way.
I hear that ding every single time I listen to If I Fell.
No question.
Yeah.
It's funny. I still have cassettes that I recorded off the radio, and from, around 1969, 70 and early 70s.
Mhm.
And the name of this podcast being, Skips and Scratches. It's one of those things that I think is a unique shared experience of folk of our ilk. With that we all have a variety of albums that just because of their pressing and low quality vinyl or abuse of the black wonderful stuff that skipped. And I was thinking this morning when we were kind of pondering what we were going to talk about here, and there's memories that are connected to skips that are really special. And despite the digital age and buying many different reissues of certain of records and now streaming too as well, I just always associate certain songs with the skip that originated from. And like for me, I was listening, I'm a big hard rock guy. So I'm a big UFO fan. I saw them a whole bunch of times in Boston in the late 70s. And Lights Out, I bought that record when it came out, and Michael Schenker soloing in the middle of that solo on Lights Out. And it just always skipped. And Rock Bottom too, as well. They had two skips in the middle of Schenker solos. And I can't help, I always listen to them on CD or streaming, and I still hear the click, and then remember picking up the needle to move it on.
Yep.
Sal, do you have any more memories like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a lot of them, but the one that comes back from time to time is we had a department store in downtown Boston, Filene's, and they had a record section. And this has to be like, it was 1971, so I was 14. And I would just go just to look at the records. Sometimes I'd go in specifically for something, and other times I'd just go in just to spend the day looking.
Yeah.
And on this particular summer day, I saw a cover that was interesting to me, and it was the Faces long player. If you remember that at all.
Yeah, it's an interesting cover.
You're right. And it caught my eye, and I was looking at it. I kind of knew the name Rod Stewart, and I knew the Small Faces, but I didn't really know what was in that record. I took that record home, and it tore my head off. I bought it specifically because it looked interesting to me. I didn't know what the music was going to be like on that, and I remember that summer, I just would play that thing, wore it right down, man.
Isn't it interesting how we have so many of those records in our collections that we bought because they looked interesting?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that we're from that era. I mean, basically, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where records really looked interesting, and sometimes that was part of the decision making. You turn it over and you go, oh, it's produced by Steve Lillywhite, or oh, it's features John Entwistle on bass on that song, or whatever. Stuff like that helped too. But sometimes it was just looking at it that said, I need to know what this sounds like.
Well, I actually have broken it down into a very scientific process, and this is the subject for a future podcast, Steve, of how the arc of the trip down memory lane with record buying, the science of record buying in the 70s in particular, worked, at least for me, but I think it's something that works for a lot of people. But I have an 8-step process that I had that I could evaluate in under 30 seconds whether that record was going to work within the parameters of what I was looking for. And a lot of it is connected with what you were saying. You look at the session players, where it was recorded, who engineered the record, of course, who produced the record, who played on it. But there were all these things that went into it. And look, like Sal, was the place that's the first step inside the store itself. Besides setting your mindset ready to find and discover bury
Right.
treasure. That you always had to prep yourself for.
One of the
Yeah, so-
records I distinctly remember buying was by this guy over here. I thought Stompers turned it around, and who produced the album again? Was it Glenn Kolotkin and
Richie Cordell and Glenn Kolotkin.
Yeah, and because of them, I thought, you know what? I dig the name Sal Baglio. Those two guys produced the album. It looks like it's cool, so I took it home, and I've been a fan ever since.
I don't know how many times I saw the Stompers, Sal. Not a lot. I was underage, sneaking into clubs a lot during the mid-late 70s. I was a rather precocious kid. That's a subject for an entirely different podcast. Not one for the kids necessarily with some of the anecdotal stories. But, the Stompers really were a legendary live band. I mean, and Sal as a front man, unfreaking believable. I mean, definition of frontman. There were a lot of great bands, as Sal well knows, in that era of Boston music. But in terms of live performance, I don't know if there was a better frontman, in my opinion, than you, sir.
Thank you, Bruce, man.
Yeah.
Humble thanks, my friend.
That's it for this episode of Skips and Scratches. My name is Steve Schnee.
All right, everybody, you keep a nickel on that tone arm. This is Sal B saying, see you next week.
And I'm Bruce Brodeen, and as always, pop on.
Remember to share, comment, like, and subscribe. Remember to click the bell and get notifications. And we'll see you next time on Skips and Scratches.